All right. Alrighty, guys. So thank you so much for joining me. Will you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Dream Harris.
I'm Eric Coulbourne.
Coulbourne. And I'm Eric Martinez, the other Eric. Uh, yeah. So thank you so much for joining this podcast episode. As you guys may know, Pride Press, I really want it to be educational. I think right now, especially, we need more education. A lot of people are very unaware of things going on, or they just don't know. So it's important that we talk about these things. It's Black History Month, so I really want to just dive in. So the main topic for today is how Black culture shaped the LGBT movement and society as a whole. Um, you guys can jump in at any point if you want to say something. This is not an interview, it's a podcast. So, if you say whatever you want to say. Um, First of all, Dream, I do want to get your direct point of view on this, being that you are Black and you are queer. Um, what have you witnessed being Black and queer in our society? I mean, what do you think of Black culture today in our world?
Yeah, I'll start with like what I've witnessed. I have come to I was well, okay, being Black and queer, I was, raised in Black culture, so it's kind of innate. It's almost like I don't even see it as Black culture. I'm like, that's my everyday life. Like that's
Mhm.
just, my go-to. It's what I'm comfortable with, it's what I know. Of course, I've always been someone that has been open to learning and, growing and being immersed in other cultures and learning more about the world. But I feel like as Black culture, I feel like a lot has been inspired with from Black culture. Or a lot of, components of Black culture is you can see the influence in different cultures and different diasporas. For instance, like music. Music is a big one. I feel like Black people march to the beat of their own drum. They've never been one to, you know, jack anybody's style, for lack of a better phrase. But we've always been such a happy people as a whole that I feel like that happiness and that creativity has shown in many different ways. The way that how influential Black people are in rap or pop music or R&B or just blues in general. It's or rock and roll. Like a lot of the main components originated from Black artists.
No, that's a very good point. A lot of people don't realize like how much really derives from Black culture. I mean, even talking about the LGBT movement, I mean, a lot of the movement was led by Black leaders. Um, and as we'll talk about later on, like, a lot of this started from a need for, as we mentioned last time, I'm a human being. It's so basic, but and people just weren't understanding it. It's something that never should have had to be said, but it had to be said, and that sort of flowed into everything. Um,
Yeah.
and you're,
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I feel like it's almost like, it's until it's said, it's never acknowledged. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, we could just keep moving in this direction. It's like, let's chill out. Maybe not do that. Let's validate everybody's feelings. Let's validate everybody's existence. Let's recognize everybody for the people that they are, whether they be Black, white, Hispanic, blue, green,
Mhm.
yellow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Let's all allow each other the space in order to live and flourish on this big blue planet that we all share.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's true because you don't know what you don't know if you've grown up in I mean I grew up in a pretty conservative area of Ohio, and a lot of my history and education was very whitewashed, and it's only through educating yourself and having conversations with other people and trying to understand other perspectives that you can gain, knowledge of how other people are feeling, or and to grasp the also grasp the feeling of someone not feeling like part of a group too, right? So it's and what makes someone feel excluded from the group.
And that kind
Um,
of just goes to show, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like that also, like for a lot of our queer brothers and sisters, that inspires them to move to these larger cities from the lesser, or move away from the more conservative areas to the larger cities so that they can experience more, they can get out more, they can get to know different people, they can get to see different aspects of life that they may not have seen from their hometowns.
and it's like you're both from New York City, right? But live in New York
I,
City.
I'm from Cali, but I do live in New York, yeah.
oh,
That's
okay.
right. And then Eric, you're in New York as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll be there soon, but
Yeah.
eventually.
Come.
Yes.
Yes. And
I mean, and I've moved around the country too, because I lived in Kansas for 5 years. I lived in Maryland for 3 years and went back to Ohio for a while. And, you know, it is a unique experience each place you go and a unique culture. You know, even just as a country, it's a completely different culture. And then you throw in, being queer or being a different race or being black or being different of any kind. And it really can shade your experience or change your experience quite a lot, and I've been fortunate to have those experiences and experience different places in our country. And I've traveled to other countries too, which I think too is helpful in gaining perspective. And really, that's what it's about, right? Gaining perspective of this is what other people are experiencing. This is a gap in my knowledge of X, Y, and Z, or my gap in knowledge of history, or acknowledging that, because I am a white person, I do have privilege that people of color don't have. And, I I thought I was rather stunned last night. I was walking out of a store, just a Duane Reade, and there was a woman of color, and the security guard stopped her and searched her bags, and I was not stopped. And I was like, oh my God, like this is happening in New York City today. Like it was kind of a slap in the face. Like, even when you're somewhere where you think like, oh, I'm in a much more liberal place, and, hoping things like that don't happen. And they do, but I am grateful that I can see it happening and acknowledge that it's happening, and know that that's not right, and it's not, you know, how it should be.
And it just goes to show, like, that's the norm. Well, the norm, for as Black folk, we almost kind of, at this point, expect it. Or at least, like, when it's happening, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I am Black. Well, here you go. Like, I'm just showing you that I'm compliant, that I'm not, challenging your authority, or however they choose to spin it for the moment to make themselves feel less guilty. Uh, what, here's my bag that I just, full of goods that I just purchased, that you probably just watched me purchase. Here's the receipt that, proof, further proving that I'm not stealing from this establishment that I probably go to all of the time. Um, which kind of just in it within itself just goes around and around like a vortex, because which everybody is trying to get to a point of equality instead of it being like, oh, I'm better than you, or oh, we need to watch out for them, or oh, we need to keep an eye out for this because of whatever reason, or because you don't look like you are lighter than a brown paper bag, or because you look like the description of people that tend to steal from this store, or you look like somebody that was up to no good. And the whole time I just came to the store in my bonnet and my slippers and I wanted to get some Snickers, you know?
yeah.
Whole time I just wanted to grab a couple things because my child is sick at home and I needed to grab some cough syrup. Whole time I'm grabbing my friend a pregnancy test because she's sitting upstairs worried out of her mind. Like you never know what somebody's going through, and to just assume a narrative about somebody is just beyond me. But it happens time and time again, whether you're, I'll say it again, black, white, Hispanic, blue, yellow, or green, gay, straight, bi, transgender, it doesn't matter. I feel like people's freedoms just tend to be infringed upon, like you said, whether in a conservative or a liberal state. It really just depends on the person and their background and what they've learned as they were coming up.
Well,
Um,
and that's the thing. It all goes back to our biases and what we've learned through our history and our culture. And I think you have to work hard to get away from a lot of those biases and to get away from this mentality of I think we very much in this country get stuck in a very much an us versus them mentality that there are good people and there are bad people, and good people look like this, and bad people look like that, and the truth is there are good and bad people of every color, every race, every sexuality, and you just have to accept that at some level and be like there's just there are bad people in the world, but when we get into these generalizations of a whole group of people are this way or that way, we're hearing about that, right, with the Somali immigrants in Minnesota, right now, and it's just like, well, how can you say a whole group of people are terrible? It just seems unconscionable to me, and
It is.
that we are in a society that's supposed to be educated and progressive, and here we are in 2026 talking about you know talking about generalizations of good and bad people, and I just think that's so, like, how did we get here?
yeah. How did we become such a divided society?
Mm,
We're,
yes.
we're supposed to pride ourselves on equality and togetherness.
Well, I think part of it is that we're always looking for someone to blame. It's bad, so there has to be someone to blame, and it's always the low man on the totem pole, or the minority, or
The them of the moment.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. If it's a small group, they can't fight back,
Yeah.
and they easily become the them of the that you're looking to make a villain, and really that's what it's about, is vilifying a group of people using generalizations, because maybe one person who was identified out of that group of people was a bad person, you know but there are plenty of bad white people out there. I mean, you know
Why do you think those narratives are still being pushed? Like, why do you think that there are still people um, who like why does that still happen? What do you think is the driving force behind that?
I feel like it's easier for people to use those scapegoats because um, it's easier to say point the finger and go them than to use your discernment. It's easier
Mhm.
to think, oh, you know what? We'll just not trust all of them instead of this one person because then it becomes like it's I feel like it's a convenience thing, I don't want to have to think too hard.
it is it,
I
it
just won't have to trust that whole group of people, so then I'm good,
it's
instead of,
about making it palatable,
yeah,
like, yeah.
exactly.
And it's like, how can I, and it's it almost seems like, how can I make this the easiest for myself? If all the brown people are bad, like, that's it's really easy to spot them. They have a visible difference, and I can easily put them in a group, and I think that is definitely part of it, and this need we have to blame someone for everything. Like they always want someone to blame. And it's, let's be real, there's not always someone to blame. Things happen, you know.
And there are nuances.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not all one thing. Sometimes it was a chain of things that caused a reaction that caused the situation. It's not like always one singular thing or
Mhm.
one singular person per se.
Yeah. I think it's also easy. I think a lot of people also turn to that and blame, generalize that way because there's already been a long history of Black oppression, Hispanic oppression, that's so it's already sort of ingrained, and I think people still have those thoughts, like even, especially those who don't support or who don't or who still blame the minorities. It's easier, as you mentioned, because there's already been it's already been a thing. It was already a
Yeah,
thing back
when
then.
I think when you have that rhetoric already in place, and then maybe one person from the, vilified group does something, it is almost like a permission perceived by people to blame a whole group of people. And it's like, well, that proves my point,
I was just
Yeah.
about to say they get to be like,
every
Hmm.
Black person is
told
bad
you.
because
Like, yeah. See,
Yeah.
they did what I said that they were gonna do.
yes, yes. And it's like, well, wait a minute, how many white people did that? Like
The
it's
exact
like,
same way. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's very um I don't think people realize how short-sighted they actually are until
Hmm.
they get very people take things very personally. And so when you talk about things like white privilege, for instance, they take it very personally. And I know if you said that to my parents, they would be like, what do you mean white privilege? I worked for everything I've had. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's getting beyond one idea of no one's saying you had an easy road to go. What we're saying is you had certain advantages just because you're a white person that these people of color did not have. And you should recognize that and be like, just like I said with the woman in the store, that just like you said, Dream, I just bought this stuff. She had literally come from the register. I was coming from the back of the store. I wasn't even I didn't even buy anything there because they didn't have what I wanted. But I was like, how bizarre that I walked all the way from the back of the store, where I could have been, stuffing things in my bag or whatever, you know. But this woman who was clearly right there, I mean, and we all know those automatic checkouts have the video camera and all that. Like, come on, really?
Audit security is like it's sometimes it can be too much. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, who are you really looking for?
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
what are you really looking for?
Yes, yes, yes.
Let's go back in history a little bit. How did and like I said, I always say this. I think most of us know the answer, but how did this start at all? How did this separation start? Separation of the races. How did this start at all? Why did it ever become a thing? And that's something I always ask people. I was like, why did this ever happen? Ever? Why did it ever start?
I don't feel like it was one specific thing. I think it was like a collection of things that
Hmm.
happened. I think one particular group got a little greedy, maybe a little jealous, and was like, I want that. I need that here now. I don't care how I get it. I mean, and I'm gonna take it. Um, which also can attest to some form of entitlement too, as
Hmm.
well. Um,
Hmm.
Instead of joining in and enjoying a culture with other people, it became like I need to own this. I need to have ownership of this. Um, which I think began the separation of races. It's like, okay, well, and again, it attests to that generalization. It's like, okay, these white people are coming over here, taking our things, or every time a group of settlers comes in, there's a famine, there's sickness, there's no so I think the clashing comes from um one group looking at another and being like, I want that here now, and then not really having anything to offer, or not really having any good greeting to give to the people, or coming in with malicious intent and not, really coming in under free, excuse me, false pretenses is what I was trying to say. Not really giving but not really putting your best foot forward, putting your most deceitful foot forward, and then ultimately taking over something that really didn't belong to you. For example, America, stealing it from the indigenous people. Um, or if you want to bring it more current, anything that happened. Sorry, my alarm is going off. Anything, in the music industry, the various artists that were disenfranchised and stolen from by white artists, and passed off as done the first time, or passed off as their own music. I'll even take it a step further. There was, I don't know if you guys have been watching the Olympics recently, but there was a young man, and congratulations to him, because it's not an easy, I'll say, trick or task to perform, but he performed a backflip, I believe, like a one-legged backflip during the figure skating event. And most people don't know is that that task was performed by a black woman in the 90s, I believe, and she got disqualified for it because it was deemed too dangerous, or and then they was like, oh, he just did it, and it's the first person to ever complete the task. And it's like, well, hold up. This happened years prior, but we just didn't give that black or brown person the credit because this white person was able to do it finally. So you know what? We'll add it in and we'll let him have it for the first time. So yeah, I think it just comes to a point where it's like, entitlement and greed, and not wanting to give credit where credit is due.
Well, and often it's about dehumanizing a group, right? And it's it's a, and that's the thing I hate seeing happen now, is that like we haven't learned enough from our history to know that dehumanizing people leads to right where we are now, and why aren't we learning from that? It's just mystifying. There's a really great book called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It's the subtitle is The Histories of Our Discontent, and she writes about racism in America, and it really gives a very detailed history of how it came about. I highly recommend it. It is a rough history that everyone should have to read, quite honestly. I mean, it's
Mhm.
you know, it's about, I think we have to make some sort of historical restitution of recognizing what has happened in our country, what has been done to people of color, and acknowledge that. And what we're seeing happen now with the dismantling of slavery displays, and then I just read the article about the pride flag coming down at the Stonewall National
Terrible.
Monument, and so when you're disenfranchising the history, the very history that is, I mean, so minimally there, right? It's not even like they're teaching this in every high school in America or something, because we don't have a national education standard about teaching our history, which I think is something we do lack in our education system. Yes, it's great to leave it up to each state, but when you have white people in charge of the boards of education, when white people are teaching their history and want to leave out whatever they want to leave out, or they just don't know because they were never taught, you're getting a very minuscule view of what history is, and a minuscule uh, experience of peoples from our country, really.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Very well said. Yeah, it's true. And I think right now I still think we're progressing, but I think we have taken a few steps back. I think people, I'm sure you guys have seen online, people feel comfortable in their racism at the moment. People feel comfortable enough to say, they feel confident in it. They feel affirmed.
Well,
And
that we've removed the taboo from it at all. At least before, even when people
Mhm,
were being racist, they might stop before they said something ridiculously insulting or obnoxious or completely racist. They might stop themselves, but now we have a leader who's making it okay. And, a White House press secretary who, pushes it all under the rug and says, oh, it was just a joke. Well, how is
mhm.
no, that's not funny.
It's not even remotely okay as another person for shits and giggles, excuse my French. Like, like we say that that's okay on a national level. You hold the highest office in the land and you're saying you're cracking jokes on people, like making them out to be animals, literally.
Mm.
And haha, this is funny.
Mhm.
I mean, and just the degradation of women that we have seen, in the press, in the White House as well. And I was out watching someone who was giving a commentary on it, and I thought they made a valid point that one of the most shocking things about all of this is that these women are sitting in a group of their colleagues, and no one's saying, stop, this is not acceptable. We will not stand for this. You can't talk to people like that. And
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, to cut you off. And to take it a step further, something that's very shocking is the complacency of the different minority groups
Mhm.
within this regime. I don't even want to call it an administration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, you are like going and supporting the very thing that is oppressing you, and I think it's such like and like you couldn't convince me to support something that did not have my own best interest at heart. I mean, and like, not even just like, okay, you know what, I don't agree with some of the things that they're saying, but you know what, they're still a great leader. No, they are actively working to oppress people. They're trying to
They're
erase
like
history.
falling into place
Yeah,
almost.
like just yeah,
They're
exactly.
like falling into place and they're doing it so purposefully. They're like, well, I guess I lost, so let me just do what he wants. Um,
Well, I think complacency is just the word for it,
yeah.
Yeah.
like just becoming okay with it, and you know, and I had watched it many times and thought, oh my God, that's awful. But just going back to the reporter example, but that woman was right. It's even worse that she's sitting in a room full of her colleagues and no one's stepping up to say this isn't okay.
Just
And
to
we're
just oh, I'm so sorry.
no, you're good. I was gonna say we're all seeing the same thing. And it's so funny because you could have two people standing on one side of the number nine, and somebody's gonna say it's a six, somebody's gonna say it's a nine. We're all looking at the same thing just in a different way. And but it's like, but this it's that's still a number nine. Like this is still racism. This is still sexism. This is still, oppression. It's very interesting just to see how this is all unfolding in real time. Sorry, Eric,
To
you were.
you're
No, no,
okay.
no, not at
Sorry, it's
all.
I'm going off the time. Just to wrap up really, which you guys made some really amazing points today. But just to wrap up really quick, what is the number one thing that you think people need to learn right now and at least acknowledge not just this month, but always. And what can we learn from this month?
Learning history. Pay attention so you don't repeat the same mistakes that our forefathers and foremothers have made. Be
Yeah.
vigilant.
And I would say, going back to the complacency, like, check your own complacency, like I said, I was watching. It wasn't until the woman said, why isn't anyone standing up for her, that I was like, yeah, why not? And it's kind of made me sad that I didn't immediately come to that conclusion too, of like, why isn't someone saying this is wrong?
Yeah.
And if you're the person in that room, say, this is wrong, this is not acceptable. We don't, we're not doing this here today.
I really, really appreciate you guys being on here with me. You guys made some excellent points. And I think, like everyone else, we're hoping for a better future. And I think we are part of the group that, hopefully will be the ones speaking out and doing what we can to help make a change happen. So thank you guys so much. It was really, really great talking to you guys. Please reach out if you have any questions. I look forward to working on more projects. So let me stop this recording really quick. Alrighty. So, Mr. Can I call you Dennis Cornell, or would you prefer Lee Daly?
Lee Daly be better.
Lee Daly. All right. So, it is so good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me today. So obviously it is Black History Month, and there's so much to talk about. There's so much to dive into. I think as a society overall, we've been influenced by Black culture heavily. I don't know if people realize it or not. I mean, even here where I live in a border town, I mean, Black culture has reached over here as well. But specifically today, I really want to talk about how Black culture shaped the LGBT movement. A lot of the early LGBT movement is influenced by the Black Power movement. What do you see in our society? I mean, how do you think that the Black Power movement has influenced our own movement?
Sure. First, I just want to make a disclaimer for everybody that I'm a old bald-headed white guy, and so I don't speak for the Black community, nor do I know firsthand their experience as Black folks in America, in the U.S., particularly the United States of America. What I do speak to is what white people can do to learn about the history of the United States, particularly the LGBTQ rights movement and Black civil rights movements in history of the United States as well. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I think that history is so important to creating a more anti-racism, anti-oppressive mindset. Because in the research that I've done, if it says if white people just learn the actual history of the United States instead of the whitewashed versions that we were taught in school, that they will become more anti-racist and more anti-oppressive in their thinking. And that's perhaps why there's been a movement the last several years to even whitewash our history more in schools, because the white folks in power don't want other people to know what actually happened. And that when they find out what actually happened, they're more likely to do something about it to keep it from happening again. So that's why it's very important to learn what that real history was. So when people learn that history, they they see the scaffolding of how it has been propped up over these centuries in the United States, and then their awareness and consciousness is raised, and they're like, wow, we need to keep that from happening again. So I just wanted to get that out there and say that's why I think this conversation is very important, and whom I'm speaking to are the white folks primarily, so that they can figure out what this history was and what they can do about it now, in this day and age, to keep that kind of stuff from happening, even though we're kind of leaning in that direction that it's happening again. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's where I'm speaking from.
What do you think are the biggest dangers right now, being where we're going politically, What do you see happening if we continue on this road?
White people are just closing their eyes. Well, as long as it's not happening in my family,
Yeah.
as long as my family's not getting deported or kidnapped from their homes or uh, killed on the streets, then I'm okay. I'm okay as long as it's not happening to me. But what they don't know is once the black and brown people are gone and the queer people are gone and the all that's going to be left are white people, and then the rich people are going to go after the poor people, and then that's where, or the middle class, or as long as you're not ultra rich, they're coming for
Mhm.
you. So it's better to get involved now than to wait till it's actually going to be when you're uh, directly affected by it.
Going to talking about the Black Power movement, I think most of us know the answer to this question, but based on your own research and based on your own knowledge and your own experience, as you said, as a white man, I mean, what do you think started? Why do you think Black queer communities were pushed to the front lines in general? The Black movement,
Sure.
the LGBT movement, what conditions made that necessary?
I think the first thing we have to look at is intersectionality. And I
Mhm.
want to define that for our listeners because it's a very important thing, a very important term. So we're all put in these different social categories, right? Whether we
Mhm.
want to or not. So the race category, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, social class, religion. So we're all put in these categories. And in these categories, there are um, oppressor sections of those categories and oppressive sections of those categories. And so, for instance, to take myself, I'm a white, cisgender, gay um, male who is middle class and is not of any religious affiliation currently. Um, all those categories are not something that I chose for myself, except for the religion part. So I was born white, I was born male, and I feel uh, my feel male up here, and it matches my genitalia, so that makes me cisgender. And I was a ultra Catholic and Christian, and have since decided not to be a part of that because of their oppressive ways. So that's something I did voluntarily, got out of there. Um, and I used to be, I pretended to be straight for 28 years, but my actual authentic self was gay and queer.
Mhm.
So um, the more of those categories that you're on the oppressive side, the more you're going to have to do to fight for your survival. So when all those social categories intersect, you're really looking at what you can do to survive. So if you have a black female, cisgender female, let's say trans female, Muslim person who is below the poverty level in the United States, and they're going to be in a lot more oppressive social categories than say myself, and so they're going to have to do things for more for survival than I will. So that's why they are usually pushed to the front lines because they are the ones that nobody's going to stand up for them, right? They're going to have to do it themselves, usually. And they're the ones in the front lines figuring this out, organizing, gathering communities together like themselves, like-minded people to stand up and do something like this. So that's why the Black Power movement came from that. They a lot of times the universities would go into black communities to establish themselves because the land was cheaper, right? They could buy the land cheaper, and so there was black communities surrounding these big prestigious universities, but nobody was taking care of the black community. They were just using their land, and so the Black Power movement came in and said, "Listen, we're going to take care of these people because nobody else is." So they gathered and organized and took care of themselves, fed, had clothing drives, food drives, all kind of stuff to help these folks. The queer people who were in the black community already knew a lot about these organization stuff because they saw the civil rights movement happening, whether they participated in it or not, they knew all about it, right? So they took a lot of those tactics and techniques to use for the LGBTQ rights movement, which happened a little bit later, but mostly simultaneously as the civil rights movement was going on as well.
I have two questions real quick. So, when you were, as you mentioned, ultra Catholic, was your opinion of this different? Do you remember what your thinking was?
Oh yeah, I thought the Catholic stuff was the correct way to go.
Mhm.
Um, Being Catholic, there is a big social justice aspect of it, but it's white social justice. Okay, so they're not thinking about black and brown people, even though there are predominantly black Catholic churches in every big city. They're not the majority, of course. They were never. I never saw them out on the front lines for the George Floyd protests and rallies. They were now the Catholics were some of them were on the front lines, the priests and stuff during the civil rights movement in the '60s. I did see that some got arrested and killed from it, but it was still a minority. If they really wanted to put their money where their mouth is, they would be out in the front, leading the assemblies, leading the communities, and helping organize if they wanted to live up to those values. So I didn't see a lot of that stuff going on when I was Catholic, but it didn't affect me because I was a white Catholic,
Yeah.
right? And so I was privileged. And then once I started owning my authenticity as my queer gay self, that's when my mind started looking and saying, well, these people don't give a crap about me.
Mhm.
Because when you're a Catholic, you can be gay, you just have to be celibate for the rest of your life and you can't get
Yeah.
married. So what kind of life is that? That's not a healthy, fulfilling, holistic life. So that's why I decided to get out. Um, and uh, and have that's been a great decision for me, my own mental health as well.
Do you think that queer representation, and I know we're going off topic a little bit, but queer representation in like religion, specifically the Catholic religion, do you think it's changed a little bit? Do you think that it's improved, or do you think it's still very rigid?
I think the needle has slightly gone in the right direction with Pope
Mhm.
Francis saying, "Who am I to judge?"
Yeah.
About 10 years ago. They just now have some sort of blessing for Catholic couples, but it's not the same as a marriage.
Hmm.
And marriage is a civil thing; it's not a religious thing. When you get divorced, you don't go to the church. You get divorced, you go to the courthouse, right? So it's a civil thing. A lot of religions think it's a want to own that and say it's a religious thing when it's not. So and there are LGBTQ organizations in the Catholic Church that try to help build that up. But overall, structurally, in the large worldwide universal church, it's not moved very much at all.
And you see that a lot in the current protesting going on. They've sort of just stepped away. No comment here, no comment there, and
Hmm.
you know, you'd think that they would feel like they need to say something because they've had such a massive impact in these things, and there's just no comment here, no comment there, and it just makes you wonder. What are they thinking? Do they think that they think that not saying anything is making things better? Because it's not.
Right. Well, if you're a pastor or priest of a something white parish, you're not
Hmm.
getting affected by it, right? It's
Yeah.
not directly being affected by you. Now, there are lots of Latinos who are Catholic,
Mhm.
and there are lots of Latin parishes. And I think those priests and leaders are worried and saying stuff about it. But overall, the church is not doing nearly enough, if
Yeah.
anything. They're having prayer services to help with the violence against the immigrants. Oh, that's great. Well, they're still being kidnapped while you're in the church praying.
Yeah.
So how's that directly helping these folks? You
Mhm.
know?
Something we talked about something a second ago, circling back to what was it? Like taking from the Black communities, right? And sorry, we were talking about the Black Power movement, taking from the Black communities. I want to talk about the African continent really quick. So that movement obviously has been very different. I mean, in the United States, we have our own history of the Black Power movement. In Africa, totally different story. I know that famously, we take a lot from countries like Ghana and South Africa, and they don't get any financial give back. we take so many of their resources, um,
Hmm.
and like that's still going on. And then of course we got the USAID funding cut, so there's even more going on than there was before right now. Um, you know, I mean, what have you heard? If you've heard
I
anything.
mean, with the USA cut, uh, they're not getting a life-saving preventative PrEP medication for catching uh, uh, getting HIV. They're not
Mhm.
getting that, and that is spreading prevalently in Africa. And it's very easy, and it's 99% effective to take a pill
Mhm.
once a day, and free in a lot of ways. And because of these uh, funding cuts, they're not getting that. So they're left hung out to dry from that. So I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that we're taking a lot of the U.S. stuff is taking their natural resources, maybe giving them a tiny little bit. Oh, here's a little couple breadcrumbs for your effort. Um, and it definitely is not equal or any kind of equity going on whatsoever. So it's still colonizers colonizing other groups of people in the 21st century.
Now, I can't speak for other countries, but I know I can, obviously, for America, being that I live here and I know the history here. But what do you think people need to know the most about how Black culture and Black society has influenced our entire way of life, and why is it important for people to know that?
Yeah, so I think um, for one, let's look at RuPaul's Drag Race, right?
Mhm.
So we one of the most important, or one of the most look forward to segments every season is the reading challenge, the reading mini challenge,
Mhm.
uh, where the queens get up in front. RuPaul says the library is open. Why? Because reading is fundamental. They put these glasses on, then they throw shade at each one
Mhm.
of their contestants, right? And it's a fun, humorous way to kind of tease each other, um, and that was born from the ball culture from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And if anybody's ever seen Pose, it's on Hulu. It's a three season series on the Black and brown LGBTQ ball culture. Excellent. So if anybody has not seen that, it's very historically accurate, um, and will tell you where a lot of this stuff that we use in our queer culture comes from those Black and brown queer folks, and they don't get the credit for it,
Mhm.
right? They uh, It becomes mainstream, and then people just start doing it and saying it and using it, and don't really remember the history of where it actually came from.
Mhm.
So in the when people were figuring out they were queer and gay and trans, especially in the 60s and 70s, a lot of their families would turn against them, especially the Black and brown families. They would have nowhere to kick them out of the house, have nowhere to live. So that's where the ball culture came from. There would be older queer folks who were maybe a little more established would take in younger queer folks to live with them in their extra rooms and things in their homes because they had nowhere else to go. Otherwise, they'd be unhoused. A lot of them were turning tricks on the street to try to make money and survive from that. And so the ball culture was a way of getting together as a community, not only for survival but for uh, you know, letting go of some anxiety and having fun and creativity. And they would um, have categories where they would dress up and a lot of times in drag. And that's where a lot of the drag stuff comes from as well that we're seeing today in our mainstream culture. And they would do something where they would just show face and see how great or how passable they were as the other gender they were trying to portray. And they would do a lot of voguing and dancing and music was a big part. House and disco was a big part of this. Of what we listen to now came from that culture. Um, uh, Again, going back to voguing, mainstream. Where do we know voguing from? Well, it's from Madonna's song, right? A
Mhm.
white lady, a white cisgender female, straight
Mhm.
or supposedly straight, who made this a mainstream thing. Um, Now she did have some nods to some folks from the Black and queer communities from Vogue, the ball culture, but Mostly it was from her that everybody knew about this voguing stuff, but it had been going on for decades before that. Um, and the black and brown people were not getting credit for it. So we're seeing a lot of that in our queer culture. There's the call and response thing. You'll hear that in protests and marches. That
Mhm.
comes from the black and queer culture as well. Blues and gospel roots were all about singing about the hard times they were going through, especially in the black queer culture. And so we are used to that kind of stuff now, but are
Mhm.
not remembering the history of where that came from, because it's all been whitewashed. And
Mhm.
those folks that created that were not the face of it. They usually put whites, cisgender gay men as the face of this sort of thing.
Mhm. And it's interesting, like you mentioned, how it slowly started to get integrated into our mainstream media. I mean, but none of this is, like we just said, would be possible had these marginalized groups created their own culture. I mean, the LGBT culture is a culture. There are things that straight people will never understand about it. There are things
Hmm.
that, just like, just looking at races in general, people who are marginalized, they created their own culture, their own music, their own way of speaking, their own way of, even their own dialects, and it's none of today's society would be possible had those groups not created their own worlds. But then you also have people now who are like, well, let's scrub that. Racism didn't happen. Let's pretend, let's not teach this. And they think, oh, if we do that and we scrub that from the world, we scrub that from the internet, we scrub that from history, we'll just say everybody was always equal and racism won't exist. It's not how that works, you
Right.
know. And it's a little infuriating to see that right now. We have the slave exhibits taken down in Philadelphia recently.
Hmm.
And going into LGBT culture, we just had the the Stonewall uprising flag taken down.
Right.
Um, and people need to get on and talk about this because it's getting really serious. The
Right.
representation really, I don't think that in groups of numbers we're going to lose representation. I think the groups are going to stay there. I think, but it's sad
It's
when we're
it's the remembering of
yeah,
that taking place, right? It's
yeah,
the remembering of that taking place, and then so we don't do it again if it in another way,
yeah.
in a 21st century sort of way.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I think has been done well is the LGBTQ movement has remembered Stonewall as the Black trans folks did all the work during
Mhm.
that riot on that evening, right? The Marsha
Mhm.
P. Johnsons, we know her name from that, and throwing the bricks and all that kind of stuff. That's a really good story that's been passed down over the decades from that. And it didn't used to be told that way, you know.
Mhm.
But I think we're remembering the real historical root of that.
Mhm.
But then all the other stuff that's got to come along too with that. All the other traditions that we use today that uh, do not remember the historical roots from.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to mention on this subject? Anything you think that's important?
Um, I do think that a lot of, and speaking as one myself, a cisgender white gay male,
Mhm.
take for granted a lot of the rights that we have,
Mhm.
and don't do enough to fight for the rights that we don't, or that the other folks don't, that are in our community. And a lot of times they get excluded. The other black and brown folks get excluded from that part of the community. Um, and I think it's terrible that other like marginalized groups exclude other marginalized groups. Like we need to punch up and not punch down in terms of getting um, equity for all people. Um, so when the marriage equality movement happened about 10 years ago, everybody, all the white gay guys were like, oh yeah, marriage equality, we need that, because they already had all the rights, right? They already had everything else. But the poor, um, black and brown folks, those folks, they were worried about housing. They were about where the there you are. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the Black and brown queer folks were worried about housing. They were worried about food insecurity. They were worried about getting medicine to keep from getting HIV. Right? Where all the white middle class gay folks were already had that stuff, and they were on to, well, we want to get married like everybody else.
Mhm.
And so it was two different hierarchy of needs happening at the same time when they all should have been working together. Right. So we still have now we have marriage equality, but we still have people that are denied housing because of who they are. They're denied jobs because of who they are, and can't make enough money to survive. And so that really needs to be boosted up more. Those who have privilege need to get down in the dirt and help bring those folks up, and help give them a seat at the table and give them leadership, let them have leadership positions. There needs to be Black trans folks in leadership positions. That we've had enough white people in charge of stuff, and look at where we are. We need to see some other folks with their ideas and their life experience come into these positions, and be in charge of stuff. And I'm not just saying LGBTQ organizations, I mean everything. And I love that Mayor Mamdani is in charge of New York City.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. That's great. No more white guys in charge of that place. Let's see where we can go with that. I know here in Louisville, we have the Louisville Pride Foundation, and the chairperson is a Black trans woman, and the president is a Black female lesbian. So that's pretty historic in this, and it's sad to say in this day and age that that's there. But I think that's great that those, and that's just a queer organization. I want people in large corporations to be um, Black and brown folks in charge. So we have a long way to go still. But I think these white straight men need to get their butts in gear, and I mean, these white gay men need to get their butts in gear and help out the Black and brown folks in the community, help raise everyone up. Because if one person doesn't have equity or equality, then nobody does.
It needs to be a unified movement. All the movements need to come together into one big unified movement for equal rights.
Exactly. But it's about getting other people to understand that they're getting affected too. Because if they're not being affected directly right now, it's not their problem.
They don't see the point in it again.
Right.
Well, I really, really appreciate you doing this. There's a few other people I'm going to be interviewing as well, and going to figure out a way to squeeze this together into a video. But I would really love to talk about this more later, hopefully in person one day. I want to travel and I want to meet everybody. I really want to meet you. You know, we've talked another time. So, but thank you so much. I'm going to reach back out to you, and maybe we can work on something together for Black History Month. We still have the rest of the month to go. So
certainly.
Here, let me stop recording. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for joining me. So today I have Jackelin, Odyssey, and Joshua, right? How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Good.
Awesome. So again, this podcast is titled How Black Culture Shaped the LGBT plus movement. Although it is centered around the LGBT community, it is also about the Black movement in general. Being that it is Black History Month, I really felt like it was important to talk about this. I know most of us are Hispanic, and I also would like to hear some of our point of views and see how we have also been influenced, especially living on the border. And then Josh, you are obviously all the way up there in Massachusetts, and you're originally from Zambia, correct? So, you know, I'm going to kind of pick everybody's brain today. I know everybody's experience has been different, so I'm excited to see what everybody has to say. So just to start off, how do you guys believe Black culture, at least here in America, has influenced you as a person?
Like, yeah, I danced since I was 4, like professionally. So like, jazz, tap, all that came from the Black culture. So basically, and music as well. So like,
what about you, Jackelin?
Yeah. I think especially with like music, like I know like it had just a very big impact, right? Like it started a lot of transitions with different type of music and different type of rhythm and beats, and so it really does influence the the way you connect to certain things, you know, and you have to kind of just think back to all of that and how that influences like the person that you are. But even with just like any type of like movements and any like progressive stuff, we owe it all to that.
What are you, Josh? What are your thoughts?
For me personally, like I don't know because I didn't grow up here. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for me it's like as everybody say, music, different cultures, you know, the way people come from different countries, interact with people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have a friend from here, you have a friend from there, and they teach you one or two things. And to be honest, um, most of the things are positive, a little of the things are negative, but like most of the positive effects have just like um shaped people into thinking a certain way, into like, you know, not to undermine others or just basically just live positively amongst everyone.
We want to ask y'all, so why do you think that we needed a movement at all? Why um why was there ever a need for a movement? Um
Okay, we
what
would
what happened in society that we needed to stand up for other races? Like why was it ever an issue? And I suppose in the very beginning. I think we all know the answer to this, but like
and
why was
like
it?
people were treated humanly, like it's the right thing to do. I mean,
Mhm.
women didn't have rights; they had a movement. Now they have their rights, which is I meant. But same thing for African Americans as well as our LGBTQIA people. Like it, if you don't do anything, it's gonna stay the same. And in order to have to have change.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it was just all the injustice, so they had to like really start using their voices to make a change and keep fighting, and in
Mm-hmm.
order to have like what we have now, right? Not that it's 100% perfect, obviously, right? But I think that's why it was very important to have those type of movements. And then again, it actually like had a domino effect on a lot of other movements. It really started so many other people started seeing this and started like fighting for their rights and what they were wanting and what they needed. And so it really had that big domino effect.
I think that a lot of the movements that are erupted, like the Black Power movement, the LGBT movement, the women's rights movement, all stemmed from, of course, this equal thought, this equal idea of we are all equal, we are all human beings, and I think each movement influenced each other, but it really did start. A lot of it went back to the Black Power movement, which is why it's so important to talk about it this month because it created a ripple effect. And I think that we've come such a long way. And because of the marginalization and the segregation, and of course, and a lot of the tragic history that African Americans endured in America, um, a brand new culture sort of had to be created. Kind of like LGBT. I mean, we were underground for such a long time, especially during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We created ballroom culture. That's where, RuPaul's Drag Race was born from, And I think it's really interesting, how something so sad or unjust can create a home, even if it is secret, Um, I think that is beautiful. I don't think it was ever needed. I wish it wasn't something we needed to do, but obviously it was something that had to happen. So yeah. And back home, Josh, is there a movement back home and what is that like?
Okay, so you do know I'm part South African, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time I did grow up in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And like for South Africa right now, the LGBTQ movement is not like it's it's recognized. It's
Mm-hmm.
not condemned or it's not like looked like frowned upon or anything. It's actually quite accepted. Like everybody just lives their own life, you know. It's
Mhm.
like everybody, they recognize that okay, every single person has feelings, every single person has their thoughts, every single person has their way of life, and let them live their life the way they want. But when it comes to Zambia, Zambia is quite different in that way because
Mhm.
most of them are based on tradition and
Mhm.
like how they have been living from like their ancestors or our ancestors and whatnot, and they
Mhm.
believe a certain way of life and they haven't fully accepted it there. It's not like, because I do have some friends back home in Zambia, but it's like they don't want a lot of people to know because they want to keep it to themselves. They only know, like only them, their partners, their friends, and their family knows. Not
Mhm.
like every single person walking down the street has to know and whatnot.
Mhm.
Because I still feel they're still kind of scared because the voice in Zambia hasn't actually like been that loud.
Mhm.
But South Africa is like accepted that.
How would you compare, for example, living here in the United States? How would you compare the Black culture here compared to the Black culture back home? What is the same? What is different?
I feel strongly. I feel, yeah, I get that over here people try to respect their own boundaries and whatnot. But back home, like back in South Africa, like no matter where you're from, no matter where you're from, whether you're from India, whether you're from Europe, whether you're from the Middle East, whether you're from America, it's not gonna make a difference. You're gonna be accepted either way. You're gonna feel accepted from the airport. They're not gonna treat you like like some zoo animal or like some person, like a tourist or whatnot. They're
Hmm.
gonna treat you, they're gonna welcome you. Like you're gonna feel at home. Partly some of the people that I've actually told that you should go and visit this and this place, like three of them haven't come back. Swear to God.
Yeah.
Like, but like it's just like how you feel as a person. I'm not condemning any other person. It's like how you are as a person. But if you can willingly accept people and their ways of life, everything is gonna be better. You know what I mean?
Full agreement. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything they want to add?
I think especially like treating each other, with respect and just being understanding. Like you're right, like it'll make things so much better. Why
Yeah.
like live through life like wanting to judge and be upset and be angry over like the smallest things? You can literally just be like, whatever, do whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your life. Leave me alone, right?
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
teach me about it more rather than having all these like pettiness and all this like
Hmm.
anger build up over something that it's not really going to affect your life in any way. So, and I can go to anything like because even when it comes to like the way people dress, like
Yeah.
comments being made, oh they're dressed like this and I mean that, and like oh look how they look weird. And it's like what is that? Why are you letting that
Hmm.
like take over your whole day even? So I
Hmm.
think
Like I
that's a
feel
very
like
strong point that you made.
yeah, like I feel when it comes to even like what you said about people dressing up, it's just like let's see the weather. Like for example, if Eric was to come to my house and the thermostat was like to my comfortability, he would feel cold or either hot. You know what I mean? But for me, I'm gonna be used to it because I'm like, this is my own personal space. This is
Hmm.
how I live every day. So I don't feel people are supposed to judge people when it comes also to like their appearance. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because that's not actually how the person is. You might find somebody working, for example, because we all know we've known. Okay, for me, I grew up watching TV about this place. We knew about how Hooters was. Like you can go there, you can find a girl, even one of the waitresses, but it's not like that in real life. It's like just because they're dressed like that, it's just professional wise. It's like a uniform, you know what I say? That doesn't mean you have to go around harassing people, telling them all types of bullshit, and telling them they can't do this or they can't do that. You might find most of the jobs people do are just to get through a certain part of their life, or the way they are is just to like live their life the way they want to. You don't have to judge, you don't have to um like contradict their next moves or whatever they want to do. Because personally, for me, if you want to do something and you really want to do something and you're sure, I'm gonna let you be. And I expect someone else, like my neighbor or anyone else next to me, to understand if I want to do something and I've set my mind on that. And I expect them to accept it and respect it. Even if they don't accept it, I don't care. All they need to do is respect the decision.
It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think I mean, I'm not saying everything's fantastic now, right? But I think it's beautiful how we've transitioned from like, you
I
know, when
remember
you talk, what was that?
back in the day, like we would sit there and like call US a melting pot because it had so many different cultures and things. They like loved that part. Now it's like they look down upon it. I don't get it.
Yeah. It's
That's why
changed.
I feel like my biggest pet peeve is ignorance. Like if you don't know something, ask about it, learn about it, and then but don't have an opinion before you know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I had a person earlier that I interviewed, who's also one of my features. He lives up there in New York, and he was telling me, you think of New York City, you think, it's this melting pot, everything's great here, but there is quite a bit of racial profiling up there. He's telling me he was walking out of a store, and keep in mind he came out the back entrance. He's a white guy, he is gay, and this black woman was leaving the store from the front, and this cop stopped her and started searching her, and he's like, this is still like it believe it or not, it's this stuff still happens here. And I think it's also because New York is so big. There's everybody with every background, every ideology. So racism is. You live in a big city, you have a lot of progressiveness, and you have a lot of conservativeness as well. I mean, you've got a lot of everything, I suppose, right? But I do think it's beautiful how we've moved, especially when you think back to like the 50s or like the early 40s, um, people have broken out of their shell. People are speaking up now. People are saying something, you know, and even talking about the political climate right now. I mean, there's so much going on right now with politics. I don't know if you guys heard about, the slavery display in Philadelphia was taken down. The Stonewall uprising, Pride flag was taken down very recently. And of course, a lot's been scrubbed from the internet concerning diversity in the LGBT community. So there is still a lot that we need to talk about. You know, and I think these independent media is like, well, what I'm doing here, I think is important because a lot of the big ones right now are getting scrubbed as well. So it's a tough time for a lot of people right now.
It's sometimes in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on right now, and it all goes back to what we had spoken about earlier, how like those movements are important because they continue to give into what's even happening now. Like now it's like all that connection to the history that we learned. So it's like, okay, now we have to continue with certain movements, continue with certain protests, speaking out, what we can do differently, And so again, it all connects to that. Again, that domino effect, and it's going to keep, giving more to us in order to keep speaking up and using whatever resources we can.
Where you guys live, what have you witnessed as far as politics? I know that Laredo is a little bit of a bigger city than Eagle Pass. Obviously, Massachusetts has a lot more than this area in general. What have you witnessed? How have you personally been affected, if you have at all, by the political climate right now?
I think here it's been very. I think at first when the election was happening and everything, it was so loud. It really shocked me, considering that I think 90% of Laredo are like coming from immigration, and we're all Hispanic Latinos, so it was very shocking to see how loud it was towards that certain ideation. um I feel like it's been more quiet in that sense. We don't see a lot of representation now. We don't see a lot of flags being waved around and anything like that. But when it comes to even on social media, like I know recently they had like the whole walkout. So the schools students were walking out in support of immigration and wanting to speak out against ICE. And you just see like people laugh reacting and making comments and calling them names. And so I feel like on social media it's very vocal, but the city itself has really toned down, at least again from my experience. I haven't felt any type of danger, which I think it's very fortunate. um, but I don't know, I feel like it could just turn at any point, just like how it was at the beginning. So I feel like it's just like a waiting game.
Yeah. What about over there in Massachusetts, Josh?
Here, it hasn't been that bad. It hasn't been that bad. In some areas, yes, but like around me, I mean, I've heard some things, I've seen some things, but not escalated to that point. It's maybe the other states outside, you know what I'm saying? But like, it's kind of feels safe. Everybody here is. Apart from Texas, I actually love Massachusetts too because everybody here is friendly. It's like, you know how in Texas, like, I don't know if it's you that told me this, like every state has different type of people. Like in Texas, there'll be people that will say hi to you, want to talk to you, want to get to know you. And then here, the people that will say hi to you, they want to know if you're okay. They want to know if you feel safe, and they'll go about their day. It gives around the same vibe, but
The
here
Southern
people are more,
hospitality aspect.
yeah, people are more preserved here. So it's like this place actually feels safe. It feels okay. Everybody's welcoming. There's nobody like looks down on somebody. Maybe there's the thing whereby judging by appearance, like for example, if they see somebody looking like, you know how the youth dresses up nowadays, like around our age, like it depends. It's okay, it depends with also the type of people you meet, you know what I mean? But it's there. You know, it's not common, but it's there. So it's kind of safe. I mean, the authority around here is safe. They're polite, they're good. Because from the time I came here, I've been pulled over a couple of times. And every single cop I've met, whether a state trooper or somebody in the department, have been so nice. Like they've been so welcoming. They'll tell you how things work. They'll tell you what to do, what not to do. They'll tell you how to comply. They'll tell, just following every single step. And it doesn't feel like it's hostile, like they're just targeting you. It just feels like they're just telling you what to do, and they're also just doing their job. They want everybody else to be safe as well. So
Great.
I think it's pretty good down here. It's actually pretty nice.
It's a really good situation. I'm happy to hear that.
I remember when you met indoors for people and stuff like that. I remember for a lady at Times Square McDonald's, and like everybody.
Honestly, I think you're glitching out a little bit. Your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, what I was saying is like the lady that I helped open the door for, she straight up asked me like, "Where are you from? You're not from here." I'm like, "Texas." She goes, "That I kind of knew it." She goes, "You have manners." My mom
You're
was
nice.
Like everybody older than me, I literally every older person I either call ma'am or sir, and like people here are just like, why are you calling me that? Call me by my name. Don't call me sir. I'm not your boss. Don't do that.
Call me ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's how I was taught. That's how I was brought up. I was brought
Yeah.
up to either call someone older than me. Because in Africa, it's either uncle or auntie,
Mhm.
or you call them Mr. This or Mr. That, or Mrs. This or Mrs. That.
Hmm.
But like here, they want you to address them by your first name. I'm still getting used to it.
Hmm.
Because even the directors of camp, bro, I call them either ma'am or sir, Mrs. Karen Ann
Hmm.
or Mr. Stephen King.
Hmm.
And I never called them by their first or last name. I would never do that.
Hmm.
Because basically told them if my mom was to hear me say that, she would whoop my ass, bro.
Be lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So it just depends, bro. Also with the type of people you meet.
mhm.
I feel like people, yeah, people are complex, bro. So most of the time, how I'd interact with you, or how you interact with me, or everybody here is not how all of us will interact with a certain individual or other people.
Mhm.
So yeah,
What do you guys think is the most important takeaway from this? What do you think others need to learn? Maybe those who are not, who do profile others, those who do judge, or those, who, support removing, for example, like diversity from classrooms or in educational spaces. What do you think are the dangers of doing that? Kind of what's going on right now.
One more time.
Like, what do you think are the dangers of kind of what's going on right now? Like removing, diversity education in the classrooms.
I think if you just like look back into like everything like history wise, I mean, how many things did we start even now recently learning, and then you're still trying to take away that education from, you know, I think that question can go different ways, right? So there's different ways that you can answer that. It could be like, resources, jobs are getting affected,
Mhm.
um, how we were looking, how like big corporational farms were losing their workers, so it was
Mhm.
okay, now we don't have a way to get all this
Mhm.
food and crops out, and then again looking into education, like enrollment is going down. I don't
Mhm.
know if you guys are aware, but here in Laredo they're thinking about closing down, I think, up to like 5 schools because
Mhm.
enrollment went completely down due to people leaving because of the whole ICE situation, um, so and that's affecting that. It's affecting people who essentially need this education, but again, because they're targeting one specific group, it's taking away even that resource, which you wouldn't have thought of that. You wouldn't have thought that schools were going to start closing down,
Mhm.
and then you look into stuff like, women being affected, taking away their health care, taking away. There's just so much that's being removed that can help not just one group, not just one person, but just everybody in general. So
Mhm.
looking back into it, like I said, like I feel like that question can be answered in many different ways
Yeah. And another
to what it can
USAID
affect.
and another USAID funding cuts have also affected. I mean, even in countries in Africa, a lot of HIV treatment was taken away because of the U.S. The funding cuts, and even here in the United States, there's HIV clinics that are closing because they don't have any more funding. I know Peace Corps, the volunteer group, also lost a lot of funding, so they're not sending a lot of people out anymore. Same with AmeriCorps. There's a lot of people being affected by this. Taking away DEI, taking away a lot of these diversity programs, and then, like I mentioned, taking down the slavery exhibit in Philadelphia. These are really major things happening that are going to have really huge effects in the future. Um,
Mm.
you know,
Whether people try to take it out or not, it's still our history. We take up what are
you're
they
cutting out, you're cutting out
they're
again.
somewhere. But we
Mhm.
learn,
Mhm.
so we take out everything. But
Yeah.
if you but like white people are from Europe,
Mm-hmm.
so it makes.
You're still cutting out. Wait, hold on.
I live in El Paso, which is a border town.
There you go.
So ICE is a
Uh-huh.
which is a so nice.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are first.
Mm-hmm. Odyssey, you're still cutting out a lot. Like,
I might switch location.
I mean, I got the gist of what you were saying though.
Well, then good.
Yeah. But no, I mean, yeah, it's gonna be our history either way.
This whole time that's over. Look how much that we're a week.
Your audio cut out. I'm sorry. Yeah. For our deaf listeners, no.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Basically, it's really upsetting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I hope that things change. I hope that something is done. But is there anything that anybody wants to add before we wrap up?
No, precisely, bro.
Yeah.
I just feel like when it comes to like people need to understand to accept change. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't it's like you can't just try to get rid of what people have been trying to accomplish for like years and years through struggle, through hope, through prayers, through whether it's them like believing in what they believe in, and you just decide that one day that no, we need to just do this, like let the selective group look down upon this person, these people, because at the end of the day, both of you still eat, sleep, have families, and like have friends, and want to have a life of yourself that you can be proud of, you know. But I really think, yeah, people need to learn how to accept that the way of their life is not the way someone else should live. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's not all people that are bad. Like back home, we had like back in South Africa, me and Blessings were telling you about the how racist South Africa used to
Yeah.
be, bro.
Yeah, I was
Like
telling you.
these people used to train their dogs like a dog to only hate black people.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. What if like kids will pass you by your farm and what happens? And they have certain areas in South Africa where black people are still not allowed.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to multicultural, like there are a lot of people that have accepted that. And there are a lot of people that just go about their day. And they treat every single individual, whether by race, whether by religion, as a person. Like that's how I am. You feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a lot of friends. Like I have Muslim friends. I've got Jewish friends. I've got Christian friends. I've got friends of different races. But you'll never hear them or me undermining each and every single one in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all understand that despite us being human, we have differences in what we believe in and what we want. And we respect that. Quite all right. People from older than us, like who grew up long before us, would not get that. But like it's our job to change how people think from now on towards like throughout. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That was very well said. That was good.
Yeah,